I got something to say. And you're probably thinking, why is she saying something on Wednesday? It's supposed to be Thursday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Well, our next guest, Christine Herbert, was kind enough to come on Wednesday because I am doing a special visit in New York City tomorrow. Yeah, I love New York. I just love it around Christmas now. I hear it's supposed to rain a little bit. New people I'm visiting, and also on top of all that, I'll probably shop a little less, right? So that's a good thing. Christine, hi, how are
Good.
you?
I'm good. How are you?
See, it worked, no problem, right?
Yay!
By the
Hooray!
way, there's
I get
somebody
nervous
else. Yeah.
with technology sometimes.
I want to wave to Holly and Jenna, who's joined us. These two women are awesome. They live in Seattle.
Oh, nice. I thought so. Were they on last week?
Yeah.
Because one of them mentioned going to a place that I think is in Woodinville. I think they said they were going to the Willows, and I was like, "Ooh, I know where that is, just down the road from me." So, hey, ladies.
So wait a minute. All right. So yes, we're talking to the rest of the world, but just in case, Holly and Jenna, you got to hook up with Christine, who's out your way. Now you're new to this area, right?
I moved out here. Actually, I've been here a while, almost 10 years. I've been in the Puget Sound area. Yeah, so I live in Kirkland right now, which is just on the other side of the lake from Seattle. So I can't see from my house, but I can see it from my neighborhood. Yeah.
It's all about connecting women around the world. That's what it's about. All right, before we go down the path, let me tell them a little bit about you.
Okay.
Christine is a part-time writer, part-time body worker, and full-time I love that, and full-time space cadet, currently living in Pacific Northwest, which we just established. I love this statement. I don't think I've ever heard it before. A dyed-in-the-wool, I need to know more about this, introvert. She occasionally surprises everyone, especially herself, by chucking it all and living an adventurous life of service overseas. Once as, this is totally not expected, U.S. Peace Corps volunteer in Zambia. Is that right? Zambia? And later as a manager for a nonprofit organization in Nepal. Now, you wrote a book too recently, didn't you?
I did. So I just released my first book this year. She looks like this. And this is a chronicle of my days as a Peace Corps volunteer living in a mud hut in Africa. So I call it sort of informally my Bridget Jones Goes to Africa book. So it's just kind of me trying to figure things out and mostly failing, but hopefully you like my story anyway and you root for me anyway.
I love that. Thank you so much for that. And we usually tell them at the end, but where can they buy? Tell them the name of your book again, because everything is backwards.
It's called The Color of the Elephant. And spoiler alert, there's no elephants in it. I do apologize for that if that's a tease. It is more of a metaphorical elephant that inspired the title of the book, but it's called The Color of the Elephant. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it at Barnes & Noble, bookshop.org. You can ask your local bookshop to order it for you. Yeah, you can pretty much get it anywhere. Okay. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, because a lot of times we don't realize it when we show things. It's like, it's backwards. All right, done. All right. Let's dive into your positive thought for women. Be audacious when it comes to following your dreams. Now, I want you to dive into that a little bit more because you have a totally different angle than I've heard other people say. So tell us about that. Why is that your one statement?
Yeah, so I chose that word specifically to be audacious. If you look up audacious, it means, or one of the meanings, is showing a willingness to take bold risks. So kind of baked into that word, it tells you it's going to be hard, it's going to be risky, but you're going to push through anyway. And I feel like that's the attitude you need to take when pursuing a dream. Because a dream is something big, a dream is something bold. and it's going to take risks. And so you really do need to realize, okay, this is a risk-taking adventure. I'm going to do it. I'm going to take those risks. I'm going to try to achieve that goal. And I think that's important to think about, you know, a risk, you know, or a dream should be something hard, you know, so that it should feel really like an amazing accomplishment when you do achieve it, you know?
Yeah.
So that was my thought that I wanted to kind of float out there. Because a lot of times people have dreams and they feel too big for them, or people talk them out of it. And I think that's a mistake.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's always a mistake. And a lot of times people will try to talk you out of it because it could come from a good place. It can just be that they have different dreams for you. And I think that is difficult for us. Like when I said, oh, I wanted to join the Peace Corps, I wanted to go to Africa, people didn't understand it. It's a dream I held for a long time, but I didn't really share with my friends and family. But I always had that inside, and I knew that that was right for me. And when I shared that with friends and family, they were like, whoa, are you sure you want to do this? Or maybe you want to try this instead, or do, you know, they were trying to talk me out of my dream, not in a way that's, you know, mean or anything, or felt that I couldn't do it, but because they had different dreams for me, ones that maybe included them in it, you know, because doing something like Peace Corps is, you know, I'm going to go to the other side of the world. You're not going to hear from me for a couple of years. And that doesn't align with their dream for you, which is fitting you into their lives because they love you. So there can be a lot of reasons where people try to dissuade you from, you know, following that.
Yeah. I was just talking about that with one of my clients, and the big thing is, and it's a fine line, you have these big dreams, be careful who you share them with. I'm very, very selective. I'm very selective because I really do believe, like you said, they could be well-meaning and they could love you, but it all has to do with them. So be very selective with who you share it with, and when you do share it, I always think it should be clear in your mind that this is what I want to do, and now it's just how and when. Do you know what I mean? I'm going to do it.
Right.
And the big thing that I see with a lot of people, if it doesn't happen quick enough, they think it's a sign they're not supposed to do it. And that's baloney.
Yes. Absolutely. There are always going to be roadblocks in the way of your dream. Because like we said, it's going to be hard. It's not an easily achievable thing. It's a dream, right? So roadblocks are always going to appear. And part of the journey and part of the feeling of success and, wow, yes, I did it, is going to come because you were able to meet those roadblocks, say, okay, plan B, or I'm going to go around, or I'm going to go over, or I'm going to try another way, and you're going to get to that end of the goal. So just know that your dream is going to come with roadblocks. Don't let that discourage you. Don't let that stop you. Maybe it's a not right now thing. Maybe you applied for grad school and you couldn't get in, and you know, do you just give up the dream? No. You know, you can decide another way to achieve your goals, or you can say, I'm going to apply next year. You know, so maybe not right now. And I think that that's something when I talk about the Peace Corps to people, they say, oh, you know, I always wanted to do that when I was younger. And then, you know, the opportunity passed me by, got married, had kids, and now I can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
And I say, there's no age limit on the Peace Corps. What does your life look like now? Like, maybe you're retired now. Maybe your kids are all grown up and gone now. Maybe you're single again. Maybe, you know, you have nothing holding you back. You know, it's like, okay, that there was an opportunity, things changed, but what about now? And then they go, oh yeah, I never kind of thought about that. I thought this was a young person's game. Can I still apply? And I say, yes, you absolutely can. There's no age limit on this. There's no age limit on your dream. Don't let it pass you by.
You know what? I for so many reasons, I agree with that. But I was having these visions of somebody saying, yeah, I'm getting divorced. What are you doing? I'm going into the Peace Corps. Right. I think that would be incredible. But I did so many things that people told me you should give up. It's going to take too long. You're too old. I hear like, wah, wah, like white noise.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the biggest things I remember was that I always wanted to dance. Forget speaking, but I also wanted to dance with the 76 dance team because there's a large audience, right? There's 24,000 people in this dance. And it wasn't until I was 40 years old and I created a dance for the city that I performed the dance that I created with the dance team, who most of them were like way younger than me.
Yeah.
And even when the owners were like, San, are you sure? And I'm like, I am so sure. And it happened when I was 40.
Yeah.
You know, you never, ever give up. You know, even when I get it, the stats are saying, what's the worst case scenario? And, you know, I think one of the reasons, like you said, it's their dream for you, and I get it with the Peace Corps because I'm like, yo, I want Christine home with me. Like, I get that. That's a whole different thing because you're like, wait, you're not in my life. But a lot of times we're going to go with the well-meaning people that love you. They think if you don't get it, it's going to be worse. Like, you're going to be so sad. You know what I'm saying? Like, they believe, don't set yourself up so to fail. Like, if you don't get it, you'll be crushed. And my feeling is I just spin that slightly different, Christine, and say, to me, failure is not even trying. It's not even if it happened or doesn't happen. I have to go out for it. And if I go after it, then to me, there is no failure. I don't know about you, but that's how I think about it.
Yeah, and like you said before, like, what's the worst that could happen? The worst that could happen is you just never achieve your goal. You don't try. I feel like the worst that can happen is you don't try and you never achieve it because you didn't try. And it's one thing if you tried and things didn't work out and it, you know, it didn't happen for you. That's life. You know, sometimes that happens. But the worst thing that can happen is to just not try.
Yeah.
You know, because
I agree.
you're carrying that guilt, like, you know, I should have, why didn't I? And then there's all that self-loathing that comes along with that. Yeah. Why did I let people talk me out of it? I should have at least tried. You know, don't go there. You know, that's preventable.
I agree. All right, so we need to hear some stories. My peeps want to hear stories. I'm getting some emails in here. They want a little bit more about some stories that are in your book. Just one little thing that you can share.
Oh, gosh. Let me think here. So there are so many fun stories. A lot of them involve a lot of sickness and animals and all sorts of parasites and things that you don't have to deal with, which is great because, you know, you go on the armchair adventure and I take care of that for you. Let's talk about
maybe something fun. What was the highlight of all the trips you've done? Maybe in Zambia, what was like one of the highlights of that trip?
Oh gosh. There are so many. I would just say, and I've said this before, I really loved the sense of being part of the community and being part of, I think, the lives of the children that were there. You always, one thing that's really unusual about living there is that, I mean, there's not a lot in the way of electricity, so there's no, you know, television, very little bit in the radio department, and you know, live action, what's happening is what everybody talks about, what everybody's interested in, and you always have people around you and near you. You're never by yourself, which is very different. And you don't sit in your house by yourself. You're always out and you're doing things with people, and you always have like a flock of children around you and they follow you around like a mama duck with all of her ducklings, and they will just follow in your wake wherever you go, whatever you're doing. It's the most interesting thing they're ever going to see, and they just watch you, and they, you know, tell stories about you, and you're never alone. I don't know if that was a highlight, but that's the thing that, like, that gives me joy when I think about it now. How different it was, how different the lifestyle was, and how much they would, the community would engage you in everyday life. And the kids would always engage you. Some of my happiest memories are the kids just coming to the house. Let's just say I was inside doing something, working, preparing,
Mm-hmm.
a talk or something. And the kids would come by and they'd say, "We're here to dance." And I'd say, "Okay." So I'd break out the shatenge and everybody would wear the shatenge around their waist and we'd sing a few songs and we'd dance. And then it would be like, "Okay, dance time's over." But like that would never happen in America. You wouldn't get the local kids come to your house, knock on your door and say, "Hey, we're here to dance." And be like, "Okay, I'll just drop everything. Let me turn on
Which
the
I would
radio
love.
and let's have a dance party in the middle of your day." But there you would just drop everything to have just a simple human connection with somebody. And I loved that. I loved that about the culture.
Yes, I think I would really like that if the kids just dropped in for a dance party, because I'm all about the dance reset and having fun and being spontaneous. So that is to me, that would be one of my fondest memories too. Okay, and so then let's just go the completely opposite direction.
Okay.
What was one of the toughest?
Oh gosh. I suffered a lot of loss when I was there. And I think my toughest was when I lost my best friend in the village. I had gone away for vacation, for a Christmas vacation, and I came back and they told me like, your friend has died. And she had just had a baby. It was like maybe 3 months old or something. And it was just out of the blue,
Yeah.
and, she's young, she's in her 20s. She seems so healthy. And I don't know what it was. They told me she had a headache and 3 days later she was dead. And so I'm, missed her funeral and everything. And so when I went to try to find her grave, I couldn't find it. Because they don't use any headstones. I went to the graveyard and I couldn't tell which one was like the freshest grave, if that's not too awful to say. And I even asked somebody to help me find it, and they weren't quite sure either. And we kind of just like decided it was going to be this one, but I still to this day don't know if that was the grave, And so I kind of had like a funeral for one, and I planted some flower seeds on her grave. And that was probably the hardest, where,
Yeah.
But I lost my counterpart, my village counterpart that was helping me with projects. Shortly after I left, I lost my government counterpart, and I lost one of the kids that I, would come to my house for dancing, and I lost him shortly after I left. So there was a lot of loss of people that I was very close to. Yeah. It was definitely the hardest.
When you came back, I mean, that probably gave you a whole different perspective on life and what you wanted to shine on the world. So how did it change your perspective for the next part of your journey after seeing that and having that happen? I mean, obviously you did have some great moments, but also some really tough moments. How did it change it?
It's so hard to say. It's just such a different culture. It took me a long time to kind of figure out my American self again once I came back to the States. That felt like a very hard thing to do. And I tried to shoehorn myself back into my old life. I went back to doing the same job I was doing at the same location. I lived on the same street where I had lived. And just, had all my friends around me that were there before I left. I just kind of put myself right back into my old life, and I could not do it. I did not fit.
Absolutely.
I had changed in so many ways, and I couldn't shoehorn myself back into my old life. There was no going back, and that was really hard for me to realize. So it took me a while to kind of feel comfortable with, first world living, as we call it, and the different challenges that come along with that lifestyle. That took me a really long time, and I think I still navigate that to this day.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, did you change career paths then?
I did. And it's funny because now I've come full circle and I'm back to doing body work, which is what I was doing back then. And I love it now, but it took me a long time. It took me, so I did that for a long time, did that for about 10 years. And I did nonprofit work for about 10 years, and then came back to doing massage therapy, which was my first ever real job, I think. After college, shortly after college, I went to massage therapy school and did that. And that was my first profession. And now I love it again, but it took a long time for me to kind of come back around and say, no, this isn't just a fluffy first world, I'm in the lap of luxury, massage me kind of mentality, because that's what felt so off-putting to me after I had
done that. Yeah.
Yeah. And now I don't feel like, oh, this is a luxury. I feel like this is necessary. This is self-care. This is something anybody should get, So I've kind of have changed my mindset about that. Now I feel really good about giving of myself in this way. Yeah.
So, and that makes sense to me, because it's, people are in this world. This is what they know. You can't unsee or experience what you've seen, but to expect them to understand that, it's impossible. It's impossible. You only know what you've experienced. Mm-hmm. But I can see it being hard to work on somebody and then needing some time to come back around to it. So as far as body work, because you said you do that part-time, is there a specific kind of body work that you do?
I do so many different kinds, but I have always done spa work. And I've never worked in a medical setting or had my own practice. I love working in a spa. I just love the environment there. I just love, that people are there to relax and they're so happy to see you, and, they're just there to unwind, and there's, gentle music playing and low lights. And I love that meditative space that's created. I'm somebody that can get anxious and, crowds and noise and a lot of people, and like this environment really nourishes me as a person. So I feel very supported in an environment like that. So yeah, I love to do spa work.
Yeah. So here you are, you tell us, I get the introvert part, but you need to explain to me, because I love this saying, a dyed-in-the-wool introvert. So what does that mean to you? I can tell you're a great writer, because just the way you choose certain words, they're on point.
Saying that you're dyed in the wool anything is just kind of like you've always been that way. Like you were just born that way. There is just no working your way out of it, and just coming to terms with it and saying, yep, that's just me to the core. And I think people don't get that, because they say, well, you're so friendly, you're not an introvert. And I'm like, no, that's not what an introvert means. It's not that we don't like people or that we can't be friendly or sometimes outgoing, but then you need that time to just be with yourself and your thoughts, and to shut down and just like be quiet. I need a lot of quiet time. And I need a lot of alone time. And I think people don't always get that, about
no,
introverts.
They don't.
Like, I need my recharge time. I need to be alone.
Yeah. During the shutdown, I remember my son was a senior in high school, and I said to him, how you doing? Like it was, 6 months in. He goes, Mom, I'm more worried about you. I trained for this my entire life.
Yeah.
He's an introvert.
And you're the extrovert.
He's friendly, but he needs a lot of alone time. He's like, I'm good. Like this is really working out for me. You, the extreme extrovert, I don't know what you're gonna do. And so I had to go out on my bike and kept waving to people from a distance, and then going into any grocery store they would let me to, just so I could see humans in person. And everybody recharges differently. He recharges by being alone, spending time with himself, and a lot of times his friends didn't understand that. Now he has people that do get that. And me, not that I don't like my alone time, but I recharge when I'm with humans. The more humans, the better. So it's what makes the world goes round. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Absolutely. Everyone ticks differently. And that's a classic, definition of the introvert and extrovert. Like, how do you recharge? Is it around people? Do you recharge by being around people? Do you recharge by being alone? And that's kind of the core of the difference there. But yeah, that was challenging for everybody, even me, who's a champion introvert. 3 months I had to be in my like studio apartment by myself, and I was starting to feel it. I was like, yeah, I could really use some human interaction now. Like,
okay, this is even enough for too much for
my
me. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, that was a really hard time for everybody, but I think extroverts especially, yeah, a
Oh
real
God,
challenge.
it's driving my neighbors nuts. Okay, well, a little birdie's telling me, did you grow up in Cherry Hill, New Jersey?
I, in fact, did grow up in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. Yeah, so I not too far from you because you're near Philadelphia, right?
I'm in the suburbs of Philadelphia near Villanova.
Nice.
But one of the viewers is saying that you grew up, they must know you. Shout out,
Oh,
you grew up in Cherry
I
Hill.
did. I did. Yeah, absolutely. So I've been on both coasts. Yeah. So I've lived in I've probably, I think, 5 different states in the US. Yeah.
Did you like Cherry Hill?
Yeah, absolutely. My family's still there, so I still go
Oh, they
back and
are?
visit. Yep. Yep. I'm kind of the only one that kind of picked up and moved out and went to the West Coast, and I love it out here, actually. I love the West
Yeah.
Coast.
Oh, so your sister lives in Cherry Hill, right?
She does. Oh, or she lives outside of it. Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So, all right, we'll switch gears here. So when you said, by the way, and I love what you sent me, because there's like so many pieces I could pull apart, that you're a full-time space cadet. And then I'm picturing what Seattle and Portland are like, and I can see you fitting in that area so well, and I love it out there.
Yeah.
What is your definition of being a full-time space cadet?
Oh, gosh, I'm such a dreamer. And like every second that I'm not actively doing something, I'm either, you know, bringing out a book. I always have about 5 books on hand at any time, like a stack over here and a stack over here. And I've got my Kindle and I've got my phone and then I've got an audiobook in the car. So I'm always immersing myself into another story. Or honestly, this is embarrassing to say, I'm honestly like staring into space and I'm doing doing something in here. I've had roommates walk into a room and be like, did you want me to turn on the television? Like you're just staring at a television. It's not even on. You're like staring through a television that's off. I'm like, oh, am I? I said, no, I'm okay. I don't need a television. So I think I'm just kind of somebody who's kind of in their head a lot and has a lot of imaginings. And yeah, that's just me. I've
I
always been
never
like,
thought of that as a space cadet. Like I just think of that as a deep thinker or dreamer, you know? But
definitely.
I'll go with space cadet. People
Yeah.
call me a wingnut. I'm a wingnut, and I'm okay with that. That means I go in a lot of different directions. Okay, so I want to make sure we go back around. You mentioned a little bit about what your book's about, but I want to tell us a little bit more. Just give us a little bit more
Oh, sure.
of what they can expect in your book.
Yeah. So I was a health education volunteer. So, and I worked in Zambia, which if you don't know where Zambia is, it is if you go to the very middle of Africa and you kind of scooch down a little bit. So you're right in the middle of the lower portion of Africa. That's where it is, surrounded by 7 other countries you've heard of more. And I lived in a mud hut there and worked on a number of different health projects, things like water and sanitation, or HIV, AIDS, malaria, tuberculosis, child health and nutrition, maternal health and nutrition, things like that. So I worked in a clinic. That was part of my village there. And I also would form and train these little neighborhood health committees where people could identify and then try to solve their own health problems. So the Peace Corps is a little different than other aid organizations where you're not just like, here's what we're offering, take it. Here's bags of food, or here's, boreholes so that you can have water, or whatever their agenda is. The Peace Corps goes to the people and say, you tell us what you need. And like, let's see if we can try to make it happen.
Gotcha.
So that's how it works a little differently than other NGOs, which are non-government organizations, which are a lot of these, organizations that you would find in Africa that are there for aid.
So that's the crux of your book then?
Yep.
About being in the Peace Corps? Yep. It's all about
and I'd say the crux of my book is just about being human, and about being human in a place that people are very different and the culture is very different, and you're discovering your shared humanity with each other, even though you're very different. And so, but yes, I talk about my work a little bit, but not too much. And I feel like that's a criticism of the book. Sometimes they're like, but what did you actually do? You know, these are like stories of funny things or tragic things or amazing things, mind-boggling things, but I don't hear too much about your work. But I feel like, talking about your work sometimes is just boring. It might just be interesting to you. And I kind of talk about some of my successes that I've had, but a lot of the stories in the book are like my failures.
Yeah.
My failure to understand or to communicate right.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you putting that out. Yeah. Well, Christine, I'm glad that you were willing to come on live with me. I really appreciate that. That means a lot to me, and for you to share your story. I want to tell them every which way they can find you, look you up, and where can they find your book, and tell them again the name of your book.
So the name of my book is The Color of the Elephant. I can be found on Twitter or Instagram at Author Herbert. Or you can find me on Facebook as well, just looking me up, Christine Author or Christine Herbert Author. And my website is the same, Christine Herbert Author. So I hope you will find it, and you can find the book, and really any retailer, if they don't have it, they can order it for you.
All right. All right, my hey, I got something to say. Christine has been a real treat, and don't worry if you missed it. I'm going to record it, and then I'll put it on all the platforms so you can share it around. And you know what I'm going to say? Until next time, toodles. Bye, Christine. Thank you.
Bye.